Hello, beautiful people. How are you doing? I trust you are staying safe. My name is IELTS-Banke. I am a professional teacher, and welcome to IELTS online classes with Banke. So today I'm going to be showing you how to write the opening and closing formats for a formal letter, an informal letter, and a semi-formal letter. It is very important that you know how to write the openings and the closings for these various types of letters, because it tells the examiner that you understand the question, you have been able to identify the type of letter that you are to write in the question. So let's get started. Recall that there are three types of letters that you will encounter in an IELTS test. There are the formal letter, and you also have informal letter and semi-formal letter. So what are the various ways by which you should write the opening and closing for these various letter types? Again, the examiner will be looking out to see how you write the opening and the closing for these types of letters to determine that you have been able to correctly identify the type of letter that you are to write. Again, the type of letter you are to write will not be stated in the question. You will have to decipher that on your own. So how do we write the opening format for the formal letter? In a formal letter, the opening format is written as "Dear Sir" or "Dear Madam." If you are imagining your recipient to be a female, you simply write "Dear Sir." I beg your pardon. If you imagine your recipient to be a male, to be masculine, you write "Dear Sir." And if you imagine the recipient of your letter to be feminine, then you use "Dear Madam." Do not write "Dear Sir/Madam." Simply write "Dear Sir," as is in my case. And make sure you put a comma. So the opening format is going to determine how you will complete the "dear" part. It will determine how you will complete the "dear" part. Usually the question will only say, begin with "dear," and nothing will be written there. So you are to now determine that this letter is a formal letter from the analysis of the question. If you have analyzed the question correctly and determined that it is a formal letter, then you simply write "Dear Sir." That is, if the person, the imaginary person you are writing the letter to, is taken as masculine. And you have your content, which comes here. Your content goes here. The content will basically address the bullet points. The content of your letter will address the bullet points. So to close the formal letter, simply close it as yours faithfully, yours faithfully, yours faithfully for a formal letter. And ensure that you write your full name. It is also important that you put a comma after the yours faithfully. Do not write yours faithfully without putting the comma. This comma is very important. You must indicate the comma and write your full name. This is the appropriate closing format for a formal letter. In an informal letter, how to write the opening of an informal letter. An informal letter is usually a letter you are writing to someone that the examiner is going to see from the letter that this is a known person to you. Examples of people you write formal letters to are friends and members of your family. So if you are writing a letter to your friend, it is taking that your friend is a known person to you. In the IELTS examination, most of the time, informal letters will have you writing to a friend, and it will be indicated in the question. So you have something like your friend is having a wedding party and you will not be able to attend. Write a letter to your friend. In your letter, say blah, blah, blah. So a friend is someone who is known to you. And in the opening part of the letter, you are going to write dear and you put the name of your friend. Only the first name should be included here. Do not add the surname. And you put the comma. The comma is very important. Again, in an informal letter, the opening part is the part that completes the dear part of the letter. For an informal letter, you simply write the name of your imaginary friend, the first name only, and you put a comma. For closing an informal letter, there are 3 options, and I usually recommend you take any one of these 3 options. You can use all the best to close a formal letter, an informal letter. You can use all the best to close an informal letter. You can use best wishes, or you can use lots of love. Depending on what works for you, personally, I like to use all the best, but best wishes is also correct, and lots of love is also equally correct. So here is what the opening of an informal letter will look like. You have, Dear John, I'm taking my imaginary recipient's friend to be male. If you are taking your imaginary recipient friend to be female, you can go for a feminine name, such as Dear Janet. So I am using Dear John in this instance. And don't forget to put the comma after writing your opening. I get a number of letters from my students, and in writing the opening, they do not include this comma. If you do not put a comma after the opening, you will be losing marks for writing a wrong opening for your letter. So you must always put the comma. And your content goes here as usual. The content is going to address your bullet points in the various paragraphs. And in writing the closing, simply use all the best. Remember, you can use best wishes and you can use lots of love. You can use best wishes, you can use lots of love. So you write, I am using all the best here. So I write all the best and put a comma. Make sure you put a comma. And now, just your first name. It doesn't have to be your real name. You can adopt any name. So in this instance, my name is Banke and I'm choosing to use my name. But the most important thing to understand here is that you do not write your first name and surname. You write only the first name. That's why I indicated here that after the all the best and you put a comma, you write your first name only. So if you are not using this, for example, you can just say all the best, Janet, all the best, Esther, all the best, whatever name you decide to use. You can use a plethora of names. So the names are many. All the best, Smith, all the best, Angel, as many names as you come up with. You don't have to think too much about it. You don't have to spend so much time determining the name to use. Just use only the first name, no surnames. So how do you write the opening and closing for semi-formal letters? In a semi-formal letter, it is usually a letter that you are writing to someone that you know to a certain extent. This is what distinguishes a formal letter from a semi-formal letter. In the case of a formal letter, the tone is official because the imaginary recipient is someone you do not know at all. But a semi-formal letter falls somewhere in between the formal letter and an informal letter, which is written to someone that you know. A semi-formal letter is written to someone that you know to a certain extent. That means this person is not a complete stranger to you. And so such people usually include letters to the editor of a magazine that you've been reading, a letter to the landlord, letter to the landlord, letter to someone who is in your professional contact. In this instance, the opening is going to read something like this. Remember that the opening of a letter is that part that completes the dear part. So for a semi-formal letter, this is someone you know to a certain extent. He or she is not an absolute stranger. So the opening will look something like this. Dear Mr. Smith. That's because I'm choosing to use the masculine recipient. So you say, Dear Mr. Smith. And make sure you put the comma. This is the correct opening for a semi-formal letter. Dear Mr. Smith. And you put the comma. Your content goes in here. The content addresses the bullet points as indicated in the question. To close a semi-formal letter, you can use yours sincerely, followed by your full name, or you can use kind regards, or you can use best regards. So for this example, you should use, I'm using yours sincerely, and I insert a comma. Make sure that you put the comma after writing yours sincerely. Put the comma and followed by a full name. So you can use any name. You can use Jane Jordan. You can use Jane Jordan. You can use just about any name. Whatever name you choose to use, make sure you write the full name. So you write the full name is the first name and the surname. So the examiner usually pays attention to all these little details. So that's it on how to write opening and closing formats for the various types of letters you will encounter in the IELTS examination. This is the assignments I want you to do. I want you to come up with a list of 5 different types of letters and do the following. That means that the 5 different types of letters should have formal, informal, and semi-formal letters in them. It should not just be all 5 types of a particular letter. There should be different types of letters. That way, you can assess your ability to identify any type of letter when you are in the real exam situation or condition. And when you come up with the list of 5 different types of letters, you should identify each type as formal, informal, or semi-formal. Identify the content keywords. If you have not watched the video on how to identify content keywords using the FRSC code, I will include the link and you can watch it. So identify the content keywords so that you know what your content would be like. Also, identify the types of recipients as known or unknown. Remember that when you identify the recipients, it will help you determine how to complete the opening of your letter or the closing of that letter. In the case of a semi-formal letter, your recipient is taken as unknown, right? And lastly, write the opening and closing formats for all these letters that you've come up with, the list of different letter questions in an IELTS examination, and send it to my email at IELTS-Banke@gmail.com. So if you enjoyed this lesson, I want you to go ahead and hit the notifications button so that when I release new videos, you will get notified. And also subscribe to this channel, IELTS-Banke, the professional teacher. I want you to subscribe and share the video to your friends and those who may need these lessons. Till I come your way, I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe and have a splendid day ahead. Cheers.